Hello, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update event. I'm going to go through, jump around stuff that's going around the world and the craziness that the governments are doing. These is just the things that have happened in the last 2 weeks. If you haven't seen the Coming Storm Economic Update, excuse me, if you haven't seen the Coming Storm video, I highly recommend that you go watch that. That gives you big context about what's going to happen in our economy moving forward. It's going to be devastating, and we want to help you prepare for that. This is just what's happened in the last 2 weeks, so we're going to just kind of pick and choose some events. Just jumping in here, the U.S. government is now paying more in entitlements out to our citizens than they are receiving in tax revenue from our citizens. That's a big problem. I mean, obviously, that just doesn't work. That's in addition to all the other things like war and interest on their debt that they're paying, all the other things that they do. Just the entitlements are more than their tax revenue. Congress just voted to triple the tax on oil, so your oil prices are going to be going up. Again, that's damaging to the entire economy because every single thing has oil priced into it. My business seems to have nothing to do about oil, but I still drive to work. The things I buy still got driven to where they were. Everything runs on oil, so tripling the tax on oil is something that hurts the economy. And of course, we've been talking about the fact that there's rumors they're going to add a value-added tax, which would be even more devastating. So financial reform, there's this big financial reform, but they decided to put financial reform against any company with 85% of their assets in financial assets. Well, GE just happens to have 83% of their assets, financial assets. You might not realize GE makes a lot of cool things, but over the last decade or two, they basically became a bank. They're 83% a bank, and they are not a good bank. They have serious trouble. The government's bailed them out. The government's kept them from going bankrupt by guaranteeing their debt. And they don't, the government just decided not to include them. I guess they knew it would probably drive them broke. If you wonder why we did this reform when all it's going to do is really help the banks, other than cause a lot of trouble. It's going to cost the banks a lot, but it's also going to make it difficult for any new bank to get into that business because the high hurdles that all this reform is going to cause. If you look at the congressional freshmen, there are 14 congressional freshmen on the Finance Committee. They raised 56% more in campaign contributions than the non-finance freshmen. So there's a lot of money to be made in all this reform. 32 states have borrowed from the U.S. government to make unemployment payments. So there's a total of $37.8 billion the states have borrowed from the U.S. government to pay their unemployment claims. 12 of these states owe the government over $1 billion. The CFTC, the Commodity Future Trade Commission, has moved to curb oil speculation. It's weird because they asked for public opinion, and public wanted metals prices, speculation and manipulation to be curbed, but they seem to be, maybe they're going to do something about that, but they're messing with oil. And Congress is just recently in the process of adding $200 billion of new spending. They call it stimulus. All it does is just, again, add to our problems. The stimulus that they've done in the past hasn't helped at all, but they're planning to do more of it. They're able to pay people off, I guess. I don't know. But this new debt is, again, it just adds to the amount of debt that we can't possibly repay. Moving on to around the world, Dubai International Capital is delaying payments on their debt for a few months. So again, this is an interesting sign. We haven't heard anything from Dubai since the beginning of this crisis, but now more problems in Dubai. British banks have large exposure there. Moving on to China, reports, we've talked about it before, but they changed some rules in their banking and possibly in their taxes on property. And there's reports that their property sales dropped 80%. That's a massive change there. China is currently consuming a little bit different gears on China, which just gives you an idea of what they are to our economy. They're consuming 30% of the world's aluminum today, 47% of the world's steel, and 40% of the world's copper. So they're a massive consumer, and yet it totally looks like they're slowing down. If they're the engine of the economy and they're slowing down, which it very much appears they are, the stock market peaked like 6 months ago there. That's trouble for the world. The EU, Europe, looking more and more tyrannical. They've been going, the rules that they're doing lately, they're breaking all their own rules. They're breaking the will of the people. And so this is kind of a scary thing, just looking at what governments around the world are doing. In Europe, they are just absolutely ignoring the will of the people. The Northern Europeans absolutely do not want to be bailing out the Southern Europeans, but they're going against their will. Well, it's one thing if they had that power, but they're actually going against, they don't have the power to do what they're doing. They're just making up new rules and doing it anyways. So this gives you an idea what's going on in government around the world. The European Central Bank chief economist Jürgen Stark basically said it looks like we're going into the next phase, which is a sovereign debt crisis. That's far more painful than any banking crisis that we've had. And then just, danger that's going on around the world. I mostly keep this to economic stuff. It's not just economic things that are happening. And if you look just what's in the news in the last couple weeks, the Korean ship sank, Northern Korean shot down a Southern Korean ship, and so there's escalation in Asia. The Turkey just, I guess yesterday as I'm filming this, they tried to run a blockade into Israel. For some reason, the government puts the story as if Israel did something horrible by jumping onto these ships. Well, they have a blockade up. Everyone knows it. The Turkish people and the Europeans that were on this boat were trying to run a blockade, had crude weapons that they were bringing in. They were purposely trying to cause this event, and they were successful at getting a big event. But anyways, now Turkey is getting angry with Israel. Turkey has historically been one of Israel's better allies in the Middle East, but they've been recently, the new government in power there is more radical Islamic, and so you see escalation there. The United States is sending huge warships into Iranian waters. There's escalation around the world. It's going to be a very ugly, dark time ahead. And let's see, Iceland warns, just in the natural, Iceland warns that the Katla volcano, which is way bigger than the one that exploded about a month ago, he said it appears it's going to explode sometime soon. This would be devastating to the world economy. We saw a little taste of that with the last one. This would be huge. So I hope you're ready. There's some very serious things afoot, and these things are getting much closer. If you haven't seen the Coming Storm Economic Update video, you really need to watch that to understand what's happening. There is a link right next to this video where you can go and watch that for free. We thank you, and if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. Thanks. Bye-bye.